Welcome back. This is Debatable, and happy to welcome Dan into the studio. Dan is the lead vocalist and writer for Bastille.
I am indeed.
You are indeed.
Welcome.
We're doing great. Great to see you here today.
It's nice to be here.
You've got a new single out called Quarter Past Midnight. We want to talk about that and the new record and everything.
Cool.
But my mom told me,
Okay.
nothing good happens after midnight.
I
But
think that's sort of the idea.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, you say chasing after something, trying to throw our lives away, running through red lights, good times, bad decisions.
Yep.
My mom was right.
She was. Yeah, she was. I don't know. It's debatable, isn't it? I think.
That's the name of our show.
Oh wow, that's. I actually didn't know that.
That's awesome.
That looks really cheesy. No. Well, I think the whole point of that song is it's the beginning of the record is kind of set loosely over the course of a night. Like it's not like a concept record, but it's sort of in
that starts the album.
Yeah, it does, and that song is kind of kicks things off. And I think it's that point where there's a bit of a fork in the road, and there are those people who, you know, choose to go home at that point, and then there are the people who choose to use that as a sort of as a springboard for the rest of the night. And I just wanted to capture that sense of excitement and the sort of the kind of the hunt for escapism and the desire to sort of lose yourself and find a way away from the sort of norms of the daily life and the problems of the world and all that stuff, like however intensely you choose to interpret it. But I guess I just wanted to try and capture that kind of like intense rush of like, come on, let's keep going, but you know, it's a Bastille song, so it's also packed with self-doubt and racked full of self-hatred and negativity at the same time. So
and everything we walk into the room with.
Yeah, exactly.
Not to be too, not to make more of it than it should, but I thought that was such an interesting that's the time of like, it's an end or it's a start. It's people are going out and people are coming back in.
Yeah.
How do you try to? Did you try to get to that in, even just in the sound and the feel? I mean, is this just, as you said, it starts the album, it's the beginning of this journy. Yeah. Well, but how do you sort of bake in that? There's this other.
Well, I kind of see things quite visually when I'm making music and producing, and I the song starts at the piano, but it's a weird, slightly fucked up piano that's I wanted it to feel woozy from the start, but quite intimate. And then it's almost like, as it goes into the pre-chorus, it drops into like a kind of big 808 halftime thing, which I think is kind of reflective of a lot of party music at the moment. And then I wanted this big kind of trashy live drum, like breakbeat sample to come in, because I wanted the record to feel like, and it does across a bunch of different songs, I wanted to nod to the 90s and to kind of Prodigy, Fatboy Slim, like that era of like, of live music in dance music, live instruments in dance music, and samples and old samples, and this feeling of kind of like nostalgia for a time that wasn't really my time, but for a time of music, it's a period of music that I love, and to kind of nod to those records and that feeling. And I wanted it to be in a sense a party record, but in a Bastille way, where like it isn't just happy, it's not shiny, it's not popping bottles, it's not clubs, like that's not my life, it's not like famey or shiny like at all, because that's not my experience of things. It's it's me and my friends, it's like being in the city, it's like seeing the good and the bad and like and losing yourself in the night, but also being like, why are we doing this again, like, in a good and bad way. You still want to do it, but you're like, we're not going to achieve anything good apart from like the feeling of right now, and of like, there's an awareness of like trying to escape the world that can feel kind of quite confusing and ever changing in kind of positive and negative ways. And I don't know, I wanted to sort of do my best to capture that all and take us into like tempos that we haven't really had before. And I don't know, that's probably quite a long answer, so sorry about that.
That's all right, we'll edit it later.
It is going to remain this ongoing 80s versus 90s for what's going to win for this moment of nostalgia. They both feel very present now.
I think they do. But I mean, for me, they kind of always have been knocking about. Their influence has been huge. But yeah,
I'm glad to hear you mentioned breakbeats, because that was very much the feel that I got from it, and I wasn't sure if that was an intentional thing. Or
Totally, yeah. Well, we a lot of the drums on the record kind of sound like samples, but we recorded them, and
I mean, obviously, I think the drums are such a big part of the Bastille sound.
Yeah,
that it's kind of a change in the nature of the drums in a Bastille song.
Yeah, well, I feel like it's. I've co-produced every song with my friend Mark and written them all, and it's quite a small circle that we work in, and it's always been important to us to sort of like try and grow and develop what we do. And I think on the first album, it was sort of epic cinematic toms and big drums like that, and on the second record we tried a bunch of different stuff as well. But here it was trying to get that sort of programmed sound or sampled sound, but for it to feel hopefully kind of warm and rough around the edges, and it's a real mix. It's a real mix of itself. But yeah, I think the thing that probably makes us sound like us is the sort of percussion element, and also my vocal, and those two things that on this song in particular you can't.
I know on the last record, you talked about the idea of it, the totality of the record trying to be about making sense of the insanity that was going on in the world at the time, and trying to
insanity, which we're all nostalgic for right now.
I was going to say that it's pretty much the same.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I think at the time I felt like there weren't many musicians or bands who were talking about real life and weren't talking about the wider world, and it's a weird one. I think I'm a fucking idiot, so I don't feel like I'm in a position to say anything of depth or worth. I felt with that record, like all I could really say is what felt true and honest to me, and I was someone that living in the world as we all do, and watching the news and having social media, like the changes that were happening were unavoidable. I think at the time we were like on the precipice of Brexit and of Trump becoming president.
Election.
And it felt like this really mad period of change, and this huge shift was happening, and then we released the record and we're able to sing all these songs like watching this all happen, and it was kind of, it felt cathartic, but also I think there was an element of like, there's a story that I've told before about like we had this massive tour production and all these visuals behind us, and we had this guy, the UK election was coming up, and we had this guy kind of dressed up as Theresa May, who's like our Prime Minister, who I'm not a huge fan of, and like doing a sort of speech lip syncing to our song. We were in this festival in Germany using this production for the first time, and we're singing this song called Fake It with our Prime Minister behind us.
I've seen the video.
Yeah, and as we were doing it was this kind of like, we were like headlining this set stage, while on the other stage Rammstein were headlining. We're like, it's just pretty surreal. But it's a 2-night festival. It's a bit like it. So you flip flop between two cities, but the same lineup. And the first night when we were meant to do it, there was a terror threat, and like 90,000 people got evacuated from this festival site, which is something obviously at the time. We're like, what's going to happen? Like, luckily, nothing serious happened. No one was hurt. That's the most important thing. But it's just such a surreal thing, sort of in the midst of that. It felt like a Don DeLillo novel or something. Standing in the midst of that, watching 80,000 people who are supposed to be having a great time, like sort of exodus. It was kind of very surreal. And then the next night, we did do the show at the other version of the festival, and I was standing in front of this like this production, singing this song called Fake It, like whatever, and I was like, I feel like I'm really proud that we're doing this, and like I do believe in it. I'm super proud of like the record and the tour, but I was like, music is also about escapism, and I was thinking to these people who are at the front, they've got like the option of Rammstein or us banging on about politics, and I was like, maybe for our next record it should be about like escapism, and so
you had that in the moment, you had that thought.
Oh, very much so. Yeah, I had it then, and I had it throughout the summer, but I was like, I wouldn't change it. I don't feel like, the show still felt great, and I wanted the production to feel like it kind of really hammered home the messages of the album in a way that felt like people would know what we thought, but without being preachy, because that's really important to me. I think there's a lot of people in bands who maybe use their position to sort of, I don't know, elevate themselves slightly above whatever.
Right.
But so it was kind of important to do that, and to like address. And I feel like since then, I mean, not that I'm now much more aware of people. I think because of how things are in the world, people are sort of like commenting on stuff a lot more, and I think that's great. But there's a lot of stuff that's been written about how in kind of strange social and political times, a lot of like culture and music becomes about escapism, and become like I think it was kind of important to me to make something that was a lot more personal on this new album, and sort of looked to what I've been up to over the last kind of year or so.
How comfortable was that for you? I know that you're not really about writing personally. You don't write about yourself.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting. I think I wasn't really aware of it when it was happening, and then when I started playing songs to people, they were like, "Wow,
opening up.
Are you all right?"
Something else,
yeah. I think I've always written quite personally, but it's always been filtered through. I think I've used films and pop culture and history and myths and legends and books and stuff as a kind of way as like a route in to try and talk about things, and I think it's also been about deflection. Like I don't think I'm much more interested in other people and in other forms of art than I am in myself, and that's reflected in what we do. And it's a nice, we had a song called Laura Palmer on our first album that basically allowed me to go around and just talk about Twin Peaks and David Lynch in interviews, which for me was like a blessed relief. I'm like,
well, that's awesome. I was going to ask about that stuff. We're talking with Dan from Bastille, and I'm glad that you mentioned Laura Palmer. Also, this is not a Twin Peaks reference, but you have another song. There's a bunch of songs that reference film and reference television things. The things we lost in the fire. I don't know if that was
film.
From the
it
film.
It wasn't from that film, but that was a film that was out at the time. And
and you had eyes to being a director, or maybe an editor or a journalist, maybe. I thought. But so is there? And you obviously chose not to for whatever reason. Is there? Does what you're doing now fit as a substitute, or is there a place that those loves intersect with what you do?
Definitely,
now?
100%. That's why I feel so lucky. I never set out to be a musician. It was something I did very privately, and it was something I did for myself, and was kind of like pushed and encouraged into it by my friends, and it's allowed me to make music videos. And all our videos I don't know if you've seen them, but they're quite kind of strange and surreal, and very much allow me to sort of scratch the Lynch itch in my life. But I've also done remixes for David Lynch songs, and therefore been able to meet him and work in across different worlds. I think I've co-hosted radio shows and written articles, and it's been I was never expecting it, but through our music doing what it's done, it's allowed me to kind of do a lot of stuff. And I feel like there are definitely some musicians who just want to jam and they just want to like write or play shows, and they're not interested in the other stuff. But I feel lucky, and I'm fascinated by the idea of like album artwork. I obsess over it, and videos.
Dying art.
But I've just got our new artwork now. Like it's finally finished today, and I'm like super excited for people to see it. And I know some people just don't care, and for some people it's like just a picture of them and some text. But for me, it's like an excuse to set the tone of the record, to like help the world around it, kind of create that. And I don't know. It's been interesting. I think the sort of journalist, the wannabe journalist in me, I wanted to write about film, and I guess it's been interesting going through sort of 5 years in the music industry and interacting with journalists and reading pieces about yourself that's quite strange, and reviews and all that kind of stuff, and seeing kind of where people come from, and I guess how people view your music, having not been there and not knowing the sort of thought process behind it. It's fascinating for me.
So you're at this moment, the single Quarter Past Midnight is out. The album is done but not done, and done. Where are we now?
It's done. It's done. There's a couple of like mixes.
So what's this phase has got all? I mean, for everybody,
it's a weird
this phase now, and then the phase right when it enters. When it leaves your world and goes out to.
It's a really strange one. I've been sort of trying to articulate it. So what were you going to say?
No. What's the?
Well, it's weird. You've got this thing that ever
gets not weird.
No, totally. It's because there's the kind of relief that comes, because I find albums, because we do everything ourselves, kind of quite all consuming, and there's that weird period where it's done, and you're like, I remember the day that we finished it. There's a band called the Wombats who our producer sort of also produced their last two albums, and so the night that we finished the record, they had a huge show in London that we went to, and it was kind of quite nice and celebratory. But I was like, the next day got up and was like, what the fuck am I doing today? I was like, where am I going? It's like really odd.
Are you good at knowing when it's done? Because the answer usually is when they rip it from my cold hands.
So Mark had to go away to Australia for like a month and a half. So that was like a very hard deadline, which was so helpful because, like you just like sort of alluded to, it's fucking impossible to let go of something. It's so hard. So it was that was really helpful, and then we went and did this tour where we were only playing older songs, and so it was just quite a nice like way to punctuate the process. And I've since come back to it through mixing and tinkering with things, but yeah, it's a weird period where you're kind of. It's up to me, having literally just finished it, to try and sort of process and articulate the whole thing. And I don't know, there's nothing weirder than describing music. People are like, just fucking play it. Like, I don't want your version of it. I want my version of it. I want my ears to judge. And so, like, yeah, it's kind of it's a strange period. But I guess it's also that weird thing where you put out a song and that's the only window in, and I'm like, I love the song, but it's also like it's 1/9 of this like body of work.
Oh, there's 9 songs on it? Yeah. Ooh,
Scoop.
We just gleaned that. Just talked to a couple of your people coming in here, and nobody's talking about the album title.
Yeah,
I don't believe I've heard a release date yet either.
Yeah,
have I?
No. Well, I think basically...
What you're saying it like, oh wow, really?
Well, no, but just because as you
I thought you were behind it.
I'm quite open, and so I think there's a sense of like, if we pretend to Dan that there's no album release date yet, then he can't
screw it up.
He can't fuck this up for everyone.
Just don't tell him the things.
So I keep every day. I'm like, what's the release date? They're like, yeah. Oh, look over there.
Shiny object.
Yeah.
So I just saw it this morning. I guess it was from a few days ago or last week. This live mashup TV performance you guys did. Try to describe for again. The describing is not the fun of actually hearing it. But
well, before we started out, we did these mixtapes before our first album because I loved like The Weeknd and Frank Ocean right at the beginning when they were putting whole albums up online for free, and I was fascinated by that, and I thought no one was really doing it in our sort of space, and we ended up using other cover versions of other people's songs, from ones that we sort of like affectionately remembered or didn't quite know, and sometimes in not listening to the originals, we'd sort of misconstrue 2 different songs as the same song, and then afterwards be like, yeah, you can't do that, mate. That's somebody else's art that you're fucking with. Yeah. But so us kind of like combining songs to sort of try and tell a story became like a bit of a thing that we do when we do live sessions and stuff. And we did this version of No Scrubs that had quotes from, we did this huge string arrangement for it, and then it has these quotes from Psycho laced in and out, kind of imagining that Norman Bates is a scrub because he lives at home with his mum. Like, and it was just like to sort of like kind of have.
Wonder whose best friend's ride he's hanging out of.
Oh, mate. No. Anyway, but just to have like a bit of fun with it, and like I love pop music so much. I think it's incredible, and it's in its simplicity and its complexity, and how it can be both those things at once, and so emotive. Anyway, so we did this mashup, and it actually we had one day to rehearse from it, and I got food poisoning the night before, and I was like being sick all night, and I didn't sleep, and the next day we went into rehearsal, and it was a boiling hot day in London, and I was wearing like all of my clothes on the floor, like shivering, freezing, and we were like, we've got to get this, and this cover kind of came out of sort of that headspace of complete delusion, and it's a sort of love letter to the kind of late 90s, early 2000s pop music, and we thought we'd just have fun with it.
With Britney, with Fat Boy Break, with
so many great.
Fat Boy Slim. There's Genie in a Bottle. There's what else was there? A bit of Justin Timberlake. Like a 2001 riff as well.
Yeah.
Like, so yeah, it was just I don't know. I think it's all meant in the most sort of praising and affectionate way possible, because I think that's the wonderful thing with pop music. Like, there's only a few chords, and they all kind of
see that there's that video of there's 4 chords.
Yeah, and it's like just every song ever. Yeah, no.
Can you? I just want to ask one more quick question, because you mentioned the mixtapes that you guys were doing early on, and but it's sort of you quickly got into albums, but you've done other things, like you did I don't know exactly what year it was, but you did that mashup, The Rhythm as a Dancer.
Yeah, that was from the first mixtape.
Yeah,
and the reason it was mashup was because I thought they were the same song.
There you go.
Not intending to mash anything.
No. And then I was like, I'd like our version better, and we put it on the mixtape, and obviously it was like, but it sat alongside a lot of stuff, like we sampled like like the Fugees and Kanye and like
Right.
all these different songs from films and film quotes, and we were just ripping stuff off YouTube like liberally.
So, but is that in your mind? Is that what the mixtape is for? Like, is there going to be any more of that coming, or is it? Now you're just you're releasing albums.
Yeah.
Even though you've done, I mean, with the last album, you released it twice.
No, exactly. And we did so we tried to do. We looked at another way to do it. So we did a mixtape that was all original songs, but they were all collaborations because we've never really collaborated before.
Right.
So we did like a song with Haim and Angel Hayes and like all these different people, and that was quite fun. So now I think we've finished another mixtape as well, and it's just quite a nice opportunity for us to collaborate.
So that's that world.
That's that world.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like we've got like the mixtape world, we've got our albums world, and we've got like the sort of acoustic-y like orchestra stuff as well. And it's quite nice. Like sometimes they all intersect, and sometimes they're very separate. But it's it keeps things interesting.
Dan is the lead vocalist and writer for Bastille. Thank you for coming by.
Thanks so much for having me.
You, man.
Cheers,
Appreciate it.
guys.
Dan
Thank
Wilson,
you.
Bastille, and we'll wait for the unnamed, unreleased, dated new record coming soon.
Comes sometime in the future of existence. Yeah.
Can't wait. Thank